Hey, Mike. You guys lead the league in rush attempts and run play percentage. How much of that is just your philosophy on how to approach and Matt's as far as how to approach things offensively, and how much of it's the injury situation with your quarterbacks?
Well, I think each week we try to do what we can to win the football game and put a plan together. And so I think for the first few weeks that's kind of where we're at. I would imagine that's going to change each week. Sometimes it'll look like that, and sometimes we may be a little bit more pass conscious. But we try to do things each and every week that give us a chance to win. And certainly you get into some contests where it's tight, like last week on the road, and you got to run the ball and play good defense.
Looking at their defense, I mean, this is a very good run defense, but teams haven't really stayed committed to it against them. Last year, they averaged the fewest opponent rushing attempts per game, but mainly because teams were playing catch-up most of the time against them.
There's a lot of things that go into the statistics, and it's a great defense. Whether you try to throw on it or you try to run on it, they got great players. They're well coached. I know those coaches. I've admired them for a long time, and really we understand the challenge. And so when you are ahead, like maybe they were last year, the runs are going to go down, but the average was still solid, and it's a difficult defense to go against. It's sound. The scheme is sound, and the players are good.
How much have you had to alter your offense because of Marcus's injury situation, as far as him playing the position?
I think what happens is we look at what he can do, and I would say that's improving, and I would say that's expanding more since the injury. So that's a positive. That's a real positive for us. That each day he continues to get better as we work towards the next game.
Mike, why have you had so much success defensively? What's been key to that success?
Well, I think the guys play hard. I think our players, they play hard for each other with a lot of effort. We've gotten good production from our front. Joel Casey leads the front that has done a good job of trying to affect the quarterback. We've played good complementary football. We're able to get some opportunistic turnovers in a few games. And then, I think Dean does a good job, and our assistant coaches, trying to get our players ready to play.
Speaking of your front, I was curious, there's a local guy on your team, Austin Johnson. I was wondering what kind of year he's having and what kind of role he plays in your defense.
Well, he plays a big role in our defense. He's a versatile interior defensive lineman who continues to improve and I think get better. Was involved in a big play on 3rd and 1 last week for us where we got a stop. Those are critical when you get those, and it was actually backed up situation. We got good field position to be able to stop a team on 3rd and 1. Austin was a part of that, but he keeps improving, and we certainly like his versatility.
Is Gabbert still in concussion protocol, Mike? And
he is as of now. He's not cleared. He won't practice today.
Are you considering promoting the kid from practice squad? Where do you stand with regard to a backup right now?
We signed Austin Johnson. Maybe they can update you on the depth chart. Austin Davis yesterday, and then we had to release that kid from the practice squad.
Gotcha.
Mike, what do you make of the Eagles through 3 games?
Talented. Talented. I look at the defense. They've got a great front with the addition of Bennett and Long. They all got a specific skill set. Graham has been a great player, productive player throughout his career. I've always admired what he's done just because he's not that typical, edge guy. He plays with a different skill set. He's very effective with it. And obviously it starts with Fletcher Cox, a fantastic football player. People that love defense, you watch him play, and he changes the game. And we've got to be very conscious of him not wrecking the game. And They got linebackers that can run. I've looked at Jordan Hicks coming out and got to know him, and obviously Malcolm Jenkins is the glue back there in the secondary, veteran presence, very instinctive player, smart, makes all the adjustments, and gets them in the right scheme and coverages.
You looking at Cox, Mike. You've seen him since he came into the league. I mean, does he look like he's taken it up even one more notch in the first 3 games this year?
Well, I think what he's done, it just seems to me like the game and the schemes come very easy to him right now. And I think that when you get a player that has great ability, great fundamentals, plays with great effort, that when you can add instincts and awareness and play recognition, it's very tough to block guys like that. And not only is he talented, but it looks to me like he understands what teams are trying to do offensively against them.
Hey, Mike, both you and Doug are former players. How do you think that helps as a head coach when you've played before?
I don't know. I mean, there's been obviously players that have coached and been successful, like Doug. There's been a lot of guys that never played football that were successful. I try to approach this job just being who I am, and maybe at some time you make decisions. If you were a player, what would that schedule look like to you, or what would this look like? And because that's what I've known, for really 4 years at Ohio State and 14 in the NFL, 18 years at big-time football. That's where I've spent the majority of my life. And so you may sometimes look at it through the eyes of a player. Not that that you're going to make the decisions based on what the players, but you try to look at, hey, what's this schedule look like? What's this training camp schedule look like? What would I like to hear right now if I was a player? What message would I like to hear or need to hear? That's what I try to do. And Doug's certainly been successful doing it his way.
Coach, being your first year, just what are your impressions of Marcus as a quarterback? What have you noticed of him, and what's impressed you so far with him just playing the position?
With our quarterback, I'm sorry, can I break up?
With Marcus.
I mean, he's an outstanding leader, competitive. I think that what you saw last week was a guy that came in and really won the game for us, gave us a spark, the opportunity to be prepared and be ready to go, and came in and won the game for us. And so that's an unbelievable teammate. He cares deeply about his team and this organization. And I've enjoyed, just getting to know him and his family and kind of, watching him learn in our system.
You have a quarterback on a rookie contract. I know this is your first offseason, but did that give you guys you and John a little more leeway in building the team?
You'd have to ask John that. I just try to coach players. He's the one that handles the personnel, and so far I love every guy on this team that I get the opportunity to work with. So, John would be able to better answer that question going down, moving forward.
Hey, Mike, this question might seem out of the blue, but Jonnu Smith, he's a Philadelphia native. He's obviously been pressed into a bigger role this season. What have you seen from him, and since Delaney's injury, what kind of role has he had to take on?
Well, those guys know that they're not going to replace Delaney Walker from a production and a passing game standpoint. That's just not who they are. That's not why they're here. But Jonnu is a competitive blocker who was a major part in our winning that game last week. His effort, his effort to the blocks, his consistency, and then he had a big catch on a bootleg for a first down. So, he's going to give us the extra effort that we need and help us in a run game. And then, hopefully, just he catches the balls that, his routes and the things that he's designed to go out there and do. He can be consistent in catching the football, but it's hard to replace Delaney Walker from a production and a passing game standpoint.
Matt, speaking of tight ends, I mean, you watched their offensive film from last week. They used 2 and 3 tight end packages. I think something like 57 out of 77 offensive plays. They've when a team's got versatile tight ends like they do in Goddard and Ertz that can catch the ball and block, what kind of challenge does that present to you as a defense?
Well, I mean, that's it's a position that really, if you look back to like college and in high school, there's not that many of the traditional tight ends. I mean, these guys are athletic guys. They're pass catchers first, and then they ask them to do some things in the blocking and in the run game. But it's a matchup. I mean, it's all about matchups and how you can cover them. They're bigger than DBs, and they're probably more athletic than linebackers, and that's kind of the problem it presents. And certainly they had 21 targets. He threw to the tight end 21 times last week, and so. I joked to our tight ends. I said, "You guys want us to ship you to Philly?" They threw to the tight ends 21 times last week, and they're good players and they're productive. So it's a great challenge for us. And so as you look through, that's what's at the college game. That's the type of player that's there. That's not the 265 or 70-pound tight end anymore. These guys are 245. They're athletic. They can run. They got great catch radius, good body control. Be a big challenge with all three of those guys.
Mike, the Mariota, and he just has that knack for getting down and avoiding injuries. You played with a guy way back in the day who could do that too. What's the key to that for those guys to protect themselves? What's the key to doing that? To hitting the ground at the right time and protecting yourself.
I think that these guys just have a sense of when things are getting dirty, and when guys are starting to get around them and where they need to be. Marcus scrambled a few times for a first down last week, and he was always able to get to that yardage marker, and then also get down. And that's what some of these guys do. They have the ability to scramble and then feel when things are getting cloudy and when they should kind of get down or get out of bounds. So certainly a skill is probably just an instinctive skill that these guys have.